It really depends on,
Okay, we will.
We ought to have a pot.
all of that.
But you guys will use your gavel.
I know, but we will call our meeting
green
to
light needs to be
order. And please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as given.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, not hearing any. All for it, say aye.
Aye.
All against? And it passes. Aye as well, and it passes. Approval of the agenda. And public comments on agenda items. We have one signed up with a no and another signed up. Mr. Curtin says yes. So raise your hand, Mr. Curtin. Thank you. Would you like to speak now, or would you like to speak when the item comes up that you're considering?
We can do it when the item comes up.
Okay, okay. Well, let me know when that is. Okey doke. And student member comments.
Okay, so I don't have much today, this month. High school prom is coming up. That is the 7th. We're finalizing finalizing that. We have a spring sports and prom assembly tomorrow that we will be holding down at the stadium. And what else? Not much has happened at the school. From what I've heard, the bullying's gone down, the vandalism's gone down. So things seem to be calming down a lot more, especially with the new safety officer, Ricardo. He's been doing great. From what I heard, the kids love him. So he's doing a great job. And then the only other thing is this come May 3rd, WASDA has asked me to attend a meeting with the State Board of Education, and it's a hearing on graduation requirements.
Oh.
So whether they'll change those, add requirements, subtract, or move things around, we're going to figure that out then.
Wow.
But that's all I have.
Can I just ask a question? So when you said spring sports and prom
Mm-hmm.
assembly, so that's down in the stadium, what does that look like?
So what we're going to have is we're going to introduce all the spring sports. We're going to have them stand. We're going to introduce the coaches. And then we're going to introduce our candidates for prom court. So we'll have all the juniors and seniors come out. We'll announce them. We have a little blurb about them we're going to read. And then we're going to set up voting for prom king and queen at prom there at the assembly.
Okay, and what day is that?
That's tomorrow morning at 8
Oh.
down at the stadium over here.
Okay, all right, thank you.
They don't need to sign in, but we're not side conversating here. But new people that came in, did you want to sign to speak about an agenda item? Okay. And they don't have to sign in otherwise, so all good. Okay, well, I will, thank you, Morgan. And
You're welcome.
we will move on to the consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
All right, any discussion?
I would like to highlight in the personnel report that we have had interviews and made a selection to replace Vietnam because she's moving on to a new position as finance director. And we have selected and appointed Mr. Dan King to be our new finance director. So not only does Dan have a varied background in public education as an instructional leader, he has a history in his military service in the finance world, managing very large budgets. So we're very excited and that Dan will be joining us in a new role.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's really awesome.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
And all that don't know, Dan has been the principal down at Belfair Elementary and was moved in this position. And I'm really excited about that for you. Very cool. And for us. Okay. And then the presentation is that.
We need to vote on.
Oh, you're right. Well, I didn't, okay. And any other discussion? Okay. And not hearing any, all for the consent agenda approval, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And aye as well. And now the Hawkins Middle School presentation. We will be walking into the middle there?
The atrium.
Okay.
Yeah, we will have the orchestra here to present and perform for the board.
Very exciting.
So
I
we'll
don't need-
invite the audience to join us across the lobby there in the atrium to listen to our students perform.
I don't need to. Gabbling out.
Thank you for coming. Seats. Yep, there we go. We all here? Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. We have the Hawkins Middle School Orchestra, and we're going to begin our concert with a song called Sparkle. So, now tell me, what's your favorite kind of pizza? Pepperoni pizza. Well, that's the name of our next song. It's called Pepperoni Pizza. So here we go. Our next song is entitled Dragon Slayer. It might make you think of ancient castles and medieval times, so here it comes. In the back. There's our encore piece, Mountain Dance. bookmark for you. One of the most amazing things that happened at our school. Wonderful kids, and it's just been a great year, and just to see them all playing together is something I was really hoping to see this year, and it's been great. Thank you very much for all the work you've done. Thank you. Bravo, bravo.
We get to have an end of year thing, you know. And we're gonna have one. We just haven't scheduled it yet. I thought maybe Robert was gonna do this.
I thought maybe he might too. I didn't want to steal his thunder.
Yeah.
Some of those kids I've known since they were babies, so that was really cool.
Okay.
So that was our main presentation of things going on at Hawkins. We have a lot of really great things happening, and I mean, another example is sports. We had over 180 students turn out for sports in the spring.
Wow.
All right.
You know, unfortunately with cut programs, that many get to actually play, but it's just amazing how many kids that want to be involved and do things after school and the activities, and trying to expand how many activities we can get them involved in. We know that there's a hunger for it.
Great.
Any questions about Hawkins at this time?
How many kids are in that orchestra?
Well, the orchestra's mixed of 6, 7, and 8, and so we have between 28 to 30 kids in the orchestra.
Do they pay for the instruments themselves?
We do have some instruments to loan out to students. We've had quite a few that have been donated. We actually had one donated to the school here recently, to come to find out it was an antique.
Oh,
And actually, we're going to be auctioning it off to support boosters.
Wow.
Wow, that's really
Wow.
good.
Nice.
That's awesome.
What surprises you most about how things are going, considering all the troubles we're experiencing?
Troubles? It's not troubles. You know,
Good answer.
that surprises me the most has been just the positivity that people are showing. The staff have just been a great family, working together and wanting to do what's right for the kids and for themselves and each other. Really coming together. and collaborating. And then the students are just, especially in the last month or two, have just really risen up to take responsibility and try to make things better. One example is our ASB has all of a sudden blossomed into wanting to do activities and run assemblies, and I have now organized a dance that's going to be happening here in a couple of weeks, and are putting together a talent show for the end of the year, and they want to have a field day going on, and just that engagement is just so meaningful because they are taking kind of ownership of what's happening in their own lives and their community.
That's huge. Do you feel like that is like progress and momentum over just how things have been going earlier in the year? Leanna and I have been to some roundtables at the high school, and we know like at least earlier in the year or in the dead of winter and Omicron surges, kids were feeling a little bit down.
Yeah, I think, I don't know exactly. I mean, I know last year that we had a great year with kids that were coming in like hard time of the year, and they were smaller class sizes and smaller groups and groups that really didn't see to engage before together, and it was pretty amazing to see what they could do and put together. And then the beginning of this year with everybody in, it was just kind of chaotic, and I don't know whether it was the mask thing that was a psychological thing or what, but it just really was hard at the beginning of the year. It really was, and it was hard for everybody. And then at some point, I think people just said, we're done with this. We want to be having a good time. We want to be part of what's going on around us.
Yeah, that's so huge to keep them engaged and wanting to be there.
Mm-hmm. And the important thing is trying to make sure that we have those opportunities available for them to step up. Because if they step up and they're not there, then it just get right back to where we were.
I think your positive leadership has been a terrific role model for all of them. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Definitely. I was going to say that I was mentioning that I've watched some of them grow up since babies when they went to daycare with my son. But listening to them learning how to play together, like if it's a little bit off, but then they came together like at the end and you could hear it, and that just like says a lot about kind of how growth is, and when they grow up and mature and they learn how to come together and work together. It was really neat to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Then we are down to the superintendent update.
Yes, and we will jump right into all of our reports from Vietnam and Finance, our budget status update.
Okay, so we will report on the month of March. So all of this data is as of March 31st, 2022. And we'll start with our capital projects. Fund balance, we are up at about $32 for March. And then our debt service, we are up also about $1,000. And for our ASB fund, we are down about $7,000 at $396,000. That's where you're seeing all of the ASB expenditure mentioned earlier. And then for our transportation vehicle fund, we have about $339,000. So up at about $27. And then moving on to student enrollment FTE status. We, for the month of March, we're at 2258 FTE, and our average year to date is about 2,251. And then moving on to the Forecast 5 report. Again, this is also as of March 31st, 2022. So we'll start by taking a look at revenue. Red radio button, you can see that year to date we have brought in 54% and we projected 58%. For local sources, we have brought in 173 and we projected 175. This is going to look slightly different when we do the budget extension for the levy revenue that's coming in. So it's going to look really high right now until that catches up. For the blue radio button, you'll see is our state sources. We have brought in 56% and we are projected at 57%. And for our federal sources, we projected 56%, we're at 36%. And looking at our top 10 sources of revenue, you can see apportionment being the top at $11.9 million. And then just a brief summary on the revenue by source. You can see purple is current year, red is prior year. For our local sources, we started receiving a little bit of levy money coming through, so you can already see that's growing. After next month, which is our biggest month, you'll probably see that go up just a lot more. For our state sources, you can see that we are bringing in more than we did last year. That makes sense. Our student enrollment did come through, so, our student enrollment did go up, so did our state funding. And then our federal funding, that's where you're seeing all of the ESSER claims that are being done. We're a lot more than we were last year. And then Jackie, next page. We'll take a look at the same thing except on the expenditure side. So our projected year-end balance is about 9% of our budgeted expenditures. And year-to-date, we have expended about 54% and we projected 56%. In total expenditures. And then for salaries and benefits, we are projecting and spending at exactly 57%. And then for our basic ed expenditures, we projected 57% and we're spending 50%. That makes sense because we did have some expenditures for federal, so it won't show up in the basic ed side. So looking at our top 10 expenditure by program, of course, basic ed being our top expenditure at $9.2 million year to date. And then looking at the expenditure by object code, purple being current year, red being prior year again, you can already see for our salaries and benefits, we are expending more than we did prior year. That makes sense. We hired more staff this year. And for our supplies, not much of a change from last year. We did a lot of our purchasing last year, and I think things are finally catching on. And for our purchase services, with school being open now, we are expending more than we did last year, so that makes sense. All right, next page. This one shows our month-end fund balance. So you can see for March, we have an ending fund balance of about 2.6 million. This is consistent with prior year's pattern. And so currently we are projecting about 3.5 million in our fund balance. And then last page, just looking at the financial summary from a high-end view. You'll see that our total revenue is 18.9 million year to date, and we budgeted 35 million, so we have brought in about 54% of our revenue. For our expenditures, we expended 20.3 million and we budgeted 36.7 million, so we've expended about 55% of our expenditures. And that concludes the summary report for March. If anyone has any questions.
I would like to commend, she didn't include this information, but we've been keeping you updated. And the application that we did for FEMA funds to support us with some of our technology costs to support kids when we were home learning, it took about 1.5 years to go through the process. Very few school districts did that, but Ashley started the process, and then Viadon and Robin in our finance department really kept at it working with FEMA, and we did receive our payment today.
All right.
Reimbursement, so we're very excited about that.
Yes. Very good job.
Definitely.
Thank you for that information.
That was a long, hard haul. The number of long phone calls that you and Robin and Ashley did with our FEMA representative, the hours were just very intense, but it was very helpful for us to be able to get that reimbursement to support the needs of our students.
That is exciting.
All right, next up, I've got a couple things. I want to start with the thing that's on here for the teaching and learning update. So I need to bring in front of you that I plan to submit a waiver tomorrow. I needed to have a board discussion first. That's one of the steps, to submit the waiver for the makeup days, for days that we missed due to weather and emergency. Now, the state law says that you cannot submit a waiver, and if your school, you have to go at least past June 14th of instructional days, including any makeup days, before you can be considered for a waiver. And in a typical year, you would have had to make up at least 3 days, plus hit that June 14th before you could submit a barrier or an application. One of our days was a declared emergency. It was Friday the 7th of January, a mudslide day. And so that day we know will get approved. We made up one day in March. So we have the 1/3 day that's part, that, and we still have to, even though we know the mudslide day will get approved, we still have to submit the waiver request. We are requesting the second day that we have left as well. In my conversation with the State Board of Health or Education, sounds like we would have a better chance this year to have that approved than in any other year. And typically also because our last day of school prior to having any days to make up was June 17th and was past the June 14th day. So once we've had the discussion tonight, you've seen the document that I am submitting, it's here in the board packet, we will submit it in the morning, and we expect a week to 2 weeks maximum before we have a reply so that we can update our families and hopefully tell them the good news that they will be done on June 17th.
Nice.
But we won't know that until after the State Board of Ed replies to us.
Okay.
Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, I brought to the attention of Arla and Leanna some information. So one of the things that we've struggled with, we personally in our district, unique, not just unique to North Mason, but we felt it more than some of our neighbors, is the impact of the McCleary decision and how the state decided to fund schools, particularly the impact of this regionalized model of funding salaries and compensation. Mm-hmm. And so the part of when the state put together their McCleary decision and the legislation that said this is how we're now going to fund positions in school districts differently than we did before, was writing this regionalization piece into law. And when they wrote it, they said that there's a group that's been studying that will present to the 2023 legislature a report on any on how it's working and with some recommendations for adjustments. That committee is taking input from school districts and other people through the end of this month that will be included in their report. As a member of WASA, the WASA board, I helped approve the report that WASA's turning into that committee with WASA's recommendations. But WASA makes their recommendations based on the needs of all the school districts in the state, so they're maybe not gonna have quite as strong a stance on regionalization and its impact as a district like we would have, because they're also representing the I-5 corridor districts that are really appreciating getting 18% more than other districts in their funding model. So I submitted my reply to the committee today, and I pointed out that there are commonly accepted in the finance world, in economics, models for determining cost of living and for projecting cost of living, expenses, districts that we could compare district to district. When the legislature wrote their McCleary resolution, they didn't use that model or a model that looks anything like those that are commonly accepted in the business world. They said, we are basing this only on housing. The common models include housing and energy costs and the cost of medical and other services and the cost of food and, clothing your family and all of those. There are several accepted models, but they all have a similar formula that gets to that amount. So I looked at the models that are out there when I wrote my report and included as my example. If you compare Belfair to Bremerton in any commonly accepted model of determining cost of living differences, the difference is 0.3%. It is 0.3% less to live in Belfair than in Bremerton when all of those things are taken into account. But the funding model gives Bremerton 12% more than they give North Mason. So I requested that we consider using an accepted model for determining cost of living as the basis for determining any regionalization. And in the case when it's less than 1%, there should not be a difference between two districts.
All right.
So, wanted to give you that information.
All right.
And in the beginning, we actually got 0%.
We did, and we had to
Yeah.
fight to get 6%, or the difference would be 18% difference between us and
Yeah.
them, and not 12%. So
Well, I can hear I can hear it in your voice.
I'm a little
how-
passionate about
Yes,
this, but
good.
I
Thank
also,
you.
Very smart people spend a lot of time figuring out how to do this. And it's a science, just like many of the other things that we say as a state, we're going to use science to make decisions. So we should also use science to make decisions about how we fund schools.
Here, here.
Yes,
So-
absolutely.
So if they were to adjust our regionalization factor, we may not have to ever run another school levy.
I'm not ready to say that.
We could pay our teachers
But we
similar
could
rates
pay our
to what-
teachers comparable to our neighbors, because
Yeah.
we're back in the place we were prior to McClary. The way the model is set up right now, we've been able to do a pretty good job of keeping our newest teachers and up through mid-career even with those districts that are 18%, because we're frugal in other ways. And but the top end of the model has a cap, and the cap is specific to your district. So the cap in Bremerton and North Mason, or North Kitsap and Central Kitsap, is 18% high, or 12% higher than the cap is in North Mason. And I can't by law agree to pay over that cap to our teachers, for example. So that's very frustrating, because our teachers who have been seasoned and get to their end of the careers and are embedded in our community, they also have to think about their retirement is based on the 5 years highest salary that they have that are consecutive years. And if they can go and drive a little bit further for those 5 years and make 12% more than they can make here, they have to take care of themselves and their families.
Yeah.
So we need that fixed. And so that's why I made those statements to the compensation committee today. So
Thank you.
I wanted to let you know that.
If I might just make a comment, I really commend you for what you've just said, and for all our listening public out there. One of the consistent ways in which our district is shortchanged by the state is on equity. We get less. And one of the things, if you're on the school board or anyone connected with the school, one of the things we have to watch is the political situation and exactly the kind of things that Dana is talking about. Otherwise, people that are just as bright as kids in Bremerton or other places get underfunded. And I think that is just a raging and consistent injustice. So there's every reason why there should be some emotion in Dana's voice, because the science finally hits on human values and finally touches our kids, and we really need to be attending to that. And I commend our newest school board member for developing a sharp eye with what the heck the legislature is doing that affects us. And I think that's a mindset that's very important. So thank you very much, Dana.
Yes.
Thank you.
And finally, I had the opportunity to attend a hearing like Morgan is going to be attending about adjustments to graduation requirements. And really, there's a theme in that to really spend some time as a state to come up with graduation requirements that recognize other ways that students demonstrate learning than testing and, you know, letter grades and those kinds of things. So being able to provide credit for experience and credit earned in other ways towards graduation requirements. And so that's very exciting that our State Board of Ed is considering how to support us in being able to do that for kids. And I can't wait to hear your response to the information as well, Morgan.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Another thing is that they're talking about is there are alternative paths available right now. There are only a couple besides testing, but it's hard because from what he's talking about, the other student reps at WASA and some of the kids at the school, is they're not always aware of these other ways out. And because of that, I've talked to graduated seniors. They're like, if I would have known that, I would have taken that, and it would have made my life so much easier. So we're trying to, the State Board of Education is also trying to publicize that more. And us in the leadership class at the high school are trying to get this out more also too. So hopefully a combination of getting the word out and adding more opportunities, it will really be able to help our students and be able to get started on that career path earlier and be able to do more than just test.
And also, you know, again, an equity issue. A smaller rural district like ours is not funded to provide all of the currently available pathways to our students that they might have access to in Tacoma or Seattle or on the I-5 corridor. And that needs to be fixed as well. So that's another thing to emphasize as we continue to engage with our legislature.
And can I just add, for those of you who don't know, WASA, you've heard that term
Oh,
here,
sorry.
is Washington Association of School Administrators. So that's who Morgan and our superintendent has referred to.
Yeah, WASA, which is the administrators, and Morgan is working with your organization, the School Board Association.
Yeah.
Washington School
Yeah.
Directors Association.
Yeah, so we have
That's
some
WASDA.
good groups, and one thing that has been an improvement over the last 5 years is we have leadership groups around the state that represent the school administrators, that represent the principals, that represent the teachers and the classified employees and different groups. And those groups didn't work together with the legislature with one voice very well. And in the last 5 years, those groups have come together, particularly around this compensation funding piece, to speak with one voice about what needs to happen for the legislature. And I think that is really powerful and is why we can start to see some change. One thing the legislature did do in this session is they funded more positions than we currently have, and it's spread over 3 years. But several years ago, they reviewed the positions that should be available in a district based on size of a school, et cetera. And they put together a plan, but they didn't fund it. So over the next 3 years, they are funding additional positions that are in that plan that they didn't fund for us. So these are positions that specifically address the physical and emotional health of students. So that means better funding for school nurses, better funding for counseling and social working support in schools. We're not going to get it all next year. And frankly, in our district, we're providing more than we're going to get funded for next year. But by the end of those 3 years, we will be funded at a much more significant level to support our kids, and that's exciting.
All right.
Yes. So, move down the list here. The other thing, and I think I will bring it up here, we could talk about it at the end during the setting up the meetings, but as you know, Director Whiteman resigned, and he moved, and so could no longer represent District 1. We have posted the opening for Director District 1 in North Mason. The end of the posting date is April 29th, Jackie? So far, we have 2 qualified candidates. Because of the timing, we checked on some things with the county elections office. So the filing period for the November election is the week of May 16th. And our board meeting, our next board meeting, which would be after our 30 days of posting, is scheduled for May 19th. And because of the timing, even though you are going to appoint someone who serves from now through December, we will have an election for that position because it was opened and has an appointed person in it in the November election. And the people running for that have that filing week of May 16th through 20th. So out of consideration for our applicants who are going to apply and, and the reality is they could both decide to run or additional people could decide to run regardless of what the board does in that board meeting. But just in case it makes a difference and to be considerate of their time and effort, I would like to recommend that the board set a special session to consider those applicants and interview them. Instead of doing it our next meeting, do it prior to that so they have time to look at that filing period and it's not a, Friday short day to get that done and down in Shelton. So I would like to consider having a special meeting in the first week of May. And I think we were looking at Tuesday or Monday or Wednesday?
I was hoping for Tuesday.
Tuesday?
We'll see how everybody.
And so I'm asking you to take action on that and.
Okay.
And so you can have a discussion and.
Do you want to set it right now, or does everybody want to kind of look at it, and then we were going to talk about, you said there was one part at the end here.
Well, we can talk about that when we set the next board meeting date, or you can talk about it now, either way.
Yeah.
I think we do need to take action in setting the meeting, so we might as well.
Yep. I was just saying if we want to do it
So
right now. or-
they don't fill out the term, they have to be appointed, for instance, that term does not expire until 2023, but they would need to run in
Yeah,
2022?
The election law says they have to run in the next available election after the person resigned. So even
Then
if.
they would have to run again in 2023?
Yes, they would. They would have to
I
run
see.
twice in 2 years in this case.
Yeah.
Which is what
That's what I
you
did.
had to do, I
Yeah.
think, Leanna, when you joined the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of
We
those,
just
one
didn't,
of
you
those.
don't want to, if we wait till our May 19th meeting or May 19th meeting, then whoever we pick that night would have to then turn around the next day and say, hey, do you,
Yeah, they would
want to
have
run? Put your name in tomorrow.
And we can't wait, like, we can't not do it.
Yeah.
Especially
No,
with the two,
we
we've already
asked.
gotten two.
The rule is it's based on when the person resigned, not when we appoint their replacement.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So,
the resignation happened before filing week, so people get to file.
yeah,
Well, I make a motion that we have a special meeting at 6 PM on Tuesday, May 3rd, and we can have a discussion about whether that works.
does 6 PM work, or is the 6:30 that we're used to for our meetings, is that better? Does everybody, can you do 6 on the?
Is that enough time?
Yeah, we're kind of trying to get it as early in May as we can.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
the Tuesday,
And that was the date of May 3rd, you said?
May 3rd.
May
Yep.
1st?
May
Oh, well,
3rd.
May Day, that's
May
fine.
3rd.
Third,
Is
okay.
there-
2
well,
days later.
2 days later,
Yep,
I was
That's
just
fine.
picking that day because she said Tuesday, but.
I said
does that-
Tuesday.
would-
Is there a reason why we couldn't do it on Tuesday, May 10th? Because then that person would have the whole next week.
I
to
think we were, just because we
decide.
were doing it as early as possible so that they had the whole time, but if we want to do it the next week.
It's the next week that's the
Yeah,
filing week.
Either of those first
Yeah.
2 weeks
Yeah,
in
what,
May would
does that work better for you on the 10th? Or
It does for me, but I can move things around too if the 3rd is
The
better for
10th is
everybody
fine.
else.
I'm either, wait,
Yeah, go
don't-
ahead and
I'm
roll.
gonna say it and then go, no.
And I think we're open to, I mean, any day. I think Monday or Tuesday was better for you.
Yeah, it's just, I don't have, business on those days. So, Monday and Tuesday is open. Actually, the 10th is wide open, so I can do that too. Either way, how is 10th looking for you guys?
Looks good to me.
All good?
Yeah,
Good
I'm
for you?
fine.
And we could always do it virtual too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but
No, well, we're going to
we're
interview the
them. Never mind. No,
applicants,
no, no.
so-
I don't want to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so and the 10th was okay for you?
Yeah. it's fine.
Okay, so we are good for May.
So do you have to
10.
like,
And are we 6 or
You have to
6:30?
vote on the motion.
I'm just writing it down for, 6 or 6:30 are we talking?
Arla just proposed 6 PM.
6 PM? Okay.
So I would just make a motion to amend
yeah.
that date to
I-
the 10th.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
And let's vote on the amendment first.
Okay.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
so
So-
I'll amend the motion
Okay.
for 6 PM on May 10th. To have a
Okay.
special meeting to select our new appointed board member.
Okay, and hearing the, that, any discussion for that? And then we don't have to, we
No.
talked about it already, so.
Then you vote on the amendment, and then you vote on the motion.
Okay, so, voting on the amendment to, change that to, May 10th at 6 PM, Tuesday, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Not hearing any. That passes, and then,
Now vote on the motion to
The
have the
original
special
motion.
meeting.
now, does she have to remake the motion, or we just?
No, you're just voting on a motion to hold the special meeting with the with the included amendment.
Okay, and now, everybody for, for the new motion of May 10th at 6 PM, Tuesday, here, at the boardroom, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Not hearing any. Aye as well. I don't know if I said aye, but
I have a question. What if our 2 board members can't make that meeting?
Then Jackie will let you know right
Okay.
after she
Yeah.
calls them to invite them.
Yeah. That'd be tricky.
all right. Well, and they didn't know about the 3rd before either,
I
so.
know, I just
okay.
mean, yeah.
Okay, so that.
That will be on her agenda tomorrow to get a hold of them and invite them and make sure they're available for that time.
Yes, okay. And then, you guys are always awesome at letting us know right as soon as you know, and we will hear about that. Okay, then, and then, there was a, question that we were gonna ask about the timber tax thing.
Yeah,
that we were-
let's do that when we get to the other
Oh, okay,
meetings
you're gonna
and
do that later,
everything.
okay, just wanna make sure that we're not putting it there. Okay, so our upcoming, board letter columnists, you will all be excited to know that I have started writing it. You're welcome. No, I'm kidding. And, May is Laura Bode, and June is Arla Shepherd Bull, and July will be our newest board member, whoever that will be.
That ought to motivate people to run right there.
Right there, I know, right? That will be exciting. Okay, and then I'm going to check on Mr. Curtin if we haven't passed you up on an agenda item yet. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, and now we are on down to our monitoring reports, and this is for action. For our, let's see, our ER 11 district calendar. I will entertain a motion to find, my eyeballs are dead here. Okay. And I'm gonna read this because I feel like we haven't read this in a while, or I haven't read this in a while. The school board adheres to the principles of policy governance. The board has written 4 sets of policies: ends, executive requirements, board superintendent relationships, and governance process. The ends policies describe the student outcomes the superintendent is charged with achieving. The executive requirement policies set the parameters within which the superintendent must operate as she leads the district toward the expected ends. The board superintendent relationships policies describe the way in which the board will oversee the superintendent's performance, and the superintendent will support the board. The governance process policies describe how the board and its individual members shall conduct business, represent the community, and relate to each other. And no less than once per year, the board receives and considers evidence regarding the level of compliance with the provisions of these 4 sets of policies, a few at each meeting. The following are those policies to be monitored during this meeting. Okay, and so down to our ER11 district calendar, and I will entertain a motion to find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER11.
Madam Chairman, I move that we find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 11.
Okay, and any discussion on that?
I would just like to say that the monitoring report for this particular ends policy is very complete, and it also describes, I'm trying to make my thing here. It describes how we provide copies of the calendar to all parents and guardians and ensure that any changes in the calendar, except for emergency closings or other unforeseen circumstances, are preceded by accurate or adequate and timely notice to students, parents, and staff. And it's, you know, it's been just an interesting few years here because
Certainly has.
sometimes we have to close a building, or we've had to close a building or close a classroom because of the pandemic. So it has, I think that the communication has been really complete and included everyone to the best of the district's abilities. There are folks that are not, they are not connected to internet. They don't have phones. They, I mean, short of driving to their homes, it's really, really difficult to get everybody. But I do believe that we've been pretty complete and pretty accurate in how we've done that. And I have to really commend the building principals and the district administration for being on top of that. This calendar for 22-23 has had input from all of the bargaining groups, and I believe that it maintains a reasonable balance between the instructional needs and the extracurricular involvement. So those are my comments.
I agree.
One piece I would like to point out that I included in this report, the state made available to districts throughout the state this year funds to apply for a grant to spend some money to look at if we want to examine the idea of going to a balanced calendar. And they use that term because it's not really a year-round calendar, but it's a calendar spread out over a larger part of the year. And many, if not all, of the districts in our region and across the state, whether they applied for the grant funds or not, are considering the transition. There are a lot of good reasons to do it. There are also reasons maybe not to. And so we started a committee to take a look at that and whether it would make sense to make a recommendation to the board for the 2023-24 year, which is why we have yet to bring, we're usually 2 years ahead with our calendars. With board approval, that's our policy and our practice. However, we wanted to get some more input before we did that. The committee is going to have an opportunity to really visit and take a look at places that do have a balanced calendar before they close out and make a recommendation one way or another. This might end up being something we look at this year and say no, and end up looking at in 5 years and making a different decision. Just it will just kind of depend how things work out. But I do want to point out that we are going to have that discussion. We are going to take advantage of the state's money to send some community members and staff to take a look at how that works, if possible, before we make a decision and before we make a recommendation to the board to consider.
Very nice.
Can I ask what types of community members or who's on this committee?
It's a very long list. I don't have it memorized.
Like a mix of
We
parents?
have parents, we have
Okay.
business owners, we have teachers, we have classified staff, we have administrators, students were invited to be a part of this, so as many stakeholders, and it is always open for more to join. So,
I think Morgan wants to be on that
Yeah.
list.
You could throw me on the list
Yeah,
that'd
we
be
have
great.
Hey, she's motioning over here.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
So there have been no decisions made. We put, we invited people through Facebook and all the other ways we could to get their interest, and I, even had business owners, as I'm doing something in Belfair, saying, hey, what about this? And I've given them Jason's phone number because he started the committee for us, and make sure that they get on that invite list. So just wanted to highlight that.
That's nice. I like hearing that, going out and seeing how it's working at another district.
Yeah,
That's nice to hear.
I think it would be easy for our committee to read some stuff and say what they think, but I think it would be great for them to see somebody doing it, and then if they still think the same thing, they've actually been able to consider it in action rather than, in theory. So.
What are some, do you know of any districts, like kind of in our region, that have a balanced model?
Not yet, but I know of several that are a little bit further along in the discussion and are planning to move that way.
Okay.
Or are getting closer to presenting recommendations to their boards.
Cool.
Very cool. All right, and any more discussion on that one? Not hearing any. Finding the superintendent's compliant, or performance to comply with ER 11, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed? And aye as well. And that passes. Thank you. And down to E6, educational equity. And I will entertain a motion to approve or find the superintendent's performance to comply with E6. Entertain that motion.
I will go ahead and make that motion, but we do have a public comment here.
Yep.
So I will make the recommendation that we find the superintendent's performance to comply with E6.
Okay. And discussion, I'm going to take Mr. Curtin's comment here. If you'd like to come up to the podium here and introduce yourself, please.
I'm Michael Curtin. I have 4 kids in the school district. Second time around. What I want to talk about is, my understanding is the state's pushing for some changes with the equality and making it more race-based, and kind of like, I see it more as pitting people against each other. But in Mason County, our issue in equality is economics. Mm-hmm. We are poor. We're one of the poorer counties. We have, there's all kinds of studies that prove that economics, regardless of race or whatever, is what is the big factor. And we suffer from being on the lower end of that. So one of the things that I was considering and I thought about was, when I did my student teaching, I tried to offer kids help before school, during lunch, and after school. And the biggest problem I had, they go after school, they go, I got to catch the bus, I got to get a ride home. I was like, oh. Well, and our lunches did match, and and same thing in the morning. So, especially for starting in junior high, when kids start failing, it becomes a pattern. And it continues throughout until they throw up their arms and say, well, I can't do this. And that just continues the failure. And it becomes, generational and stuff. We have parents that either they're single family homes, or you have 2 parents where both are working, so there's nobody there to direct the kid to do what they're supposed to do, their homework and so forth. So what I would want to propose is the elementary school buses, which is about an hour later than the high school and junior high, go by the junior high school, and then that gives an hour for kids to stay after school and get that help that they need to do that little extra help. Because if there are going to be some kids obviously who won't take advantage of it, but there'll be a lot I believe, that if given the opportunity to succeed, they will. And then we can start turning this failure around, and it'll give the kids that have all the benefits at home, but they want to stay, maybe it'll help them go from being just succeeding to excelling. And it'll also help, so it affects everybody in a positive way, because they can get that extra help. Because not every parent has a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and they don't know science or math as well as they need to really give that child that help they need to succeed. But if their kids are given that extra hour after school to succeed, I think it would make a huge difference in their ability to succeed in life. And I think it can be done with minimal cost. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some, you know, it's going to cost, like anything. But there's ways to possibly use the buses wisely to help reduce some of that. And so, yeah, that's all I have. Thank
Well,
you.
actually, Mr. Curtin, I want to say thank you, but we do have that option available to our secondary kids right now, so you had a great idea.
Okay, I didn't realize that was even available.
It is,
So-
yes, yeah. Working through the counselors or their classroom teachers, kids who participate in sports, whose parents, or other after-school activities as well, whose parents are unavailable to pick them up, have that opportunity right now. So you're thinking just like our principals are. Thank you.
Okay, I just know when my kids want to stay after school for the football game and stuff, they're not allowed to, on Wednesdays. They're not allowed
Yeah,
to
they
stay
have
at
to be
school.
participating in a school thing. We haven't expanded for just watching yet, but.
Well,
because
yeah,
of
but I was
space.
thinking, I didn't know that I could say, well, in that case, go to study hall or whatever it's called. So
Yeah.
that needs to make sure that more parents know
Yeah,
about
they
it.
need to make arrangements with their teachers. We don't have a separate study hall with a staff member assigned for like a large group. It's usually an individual teacher situation. But yes, we will make sure that that's more widely known. Thank you for bringing it up.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. That's one thing that our new communications director
Can work on.
include in all of her informative pamphlets and everything that she's sending out to the community right now. So thank you. That's really good. I do have a comment about this.
Yes.
Educational equity is a not new, but it is a required policy that we put in place this year. And I believe that we've always worked towards equity in education. However, this completely defines what we need to do and how we need to do it. And having this be the very first monitoring report.
Second one,
The second
remember?
one, oh, right. I believe that what we're doing in our district is not only wrapping our arms around systemic disparities, but identifying them and helping teachers, staff, and students create situations and an environment that will address the complex needs that contribute to inequities within our school district. This is a very complete monitoring report, and I'm really pleased, and I'm sure that your team had a lot to do with this, but just knowing that we are committed to ensuring everyone is represented in our work, surveying families, multiple languages, variety of media, all of those things, so that everyone has an opportunity to let us know whether they're feeling like they are being treated equitably in our district, in the classrooms, on the play fields, in the buses, globally in our district. So there was, we were even required to do the professional development through our School Directors Association to help us better meet the needs of our district through the policies that we create. John and I went to one of those sessions ourselves, and I think we have a couple more to go to. But eliminating practices that result in predictably lower academic achievement for any student group compared to peers, I think is a goal that we have always had as a school board. And I believe the entire district now has bought into that whole, I guess, philosophy, even though it needs to be systemic, and it is, I think, in our district. So I feel like this monitoring report, now that it's the second one, is very complete, and I'm happy to see that it's moving forward. So, thank you.
Because remember, this is the one that, because it's new and because this is such important work to the board, you asked that rather than do one report a year, we do 3.
Right.
So,
Right.
we had one
Yeah.
in January, I think, and one
Thank you.
now.
And just going to say for other people looking on that might wonder what this is, or that we're talking about critical race theory before, and that was what this is where this had came from, and where we didn't write a critical race theory, it was educational equity. And that way we're combining everybody together, and it wasn't something that seemed where we were making groups and making people left out or whatnot. That was a concern before. So when people ask about educational equity, isn't that just CRT? It definitely.
No, it is not. And,
It is
you
not.
know, when the state considered making this requirement, and when my team worked hard to write this policy and bring it to you, we really looked seriously at definitions. We knew that the concerns that members of our community have needed to be understood and addressed. Equity is not synonymous with that, with the term critical race theory. Equity is about every student getting whatever it is that they need during their school day and their years at North Mason to be successful. Critical race theory is a construct for teaching history of specific political and social things that have happened or might happen in our country, that happens in the collegiate and graduate school level and does not happen in K-12 education, and is certainly not a part of determining that we need to make sure that as a district we are focusing on meeting the needs of every single kid. And you guys did an amazing job taking a really hard look at this policy and approving a policy that defines for North Mason what equity is and how we are going to make it happen. So thank you very much.
My last part of that, the learning a bit about this at the WASDA conference and sitting through, that's kind of the path that I took when I was there, and learning the difference between equality and equity, and that there's a big difference. And what I love about North Mason is that we make it individual, and everybody here works it per child, and it's not just everybody gets the same, everybody's getting a peanut butter sandwich today, like it's individual. And my kid is definitely one of those kids that has kind of come outside of the box. So I'm super happy with the way this district is working with that. So thank you, and thank you.
I just want to add, though, I think this is one of those issues. I was at the special education thing with Laura, and one of the things I come away with, this is one of those invisible issues, and I think it's, I think Mr. Curtin brought up some important parts of that. We've got educational disparity, we've got income disparity, and there are a lot of disparities like that. And sometimes this equity issue comes up in other areas, like our discussion of why Bremerton gets a good deal and we don't. And it seems to me that's a perfect example of equity. And by attending to these issues, I think this district sharpens its political awareness, because there are certain things we can do with the resources we have, and there are certain things that require more of us if we're to be equitable. And I think policies like this help keep us on our political toes, so we can make the right kind of noises to the right kind of people for the sake of the advancement of our kids. So I thought it was a fine report.
So I just had one question. So in the context of education, what is the difference between equality and equity?
There's,
Yeah,
in the training the board members have seen, I wish I had the PowerPoint here, but in the training that our teachers got, a lot of different things, there's a picture. Okay, there's a picture of 3 kids of different heights standing outside the fence, trying to look over the fence to watch a baseball game. And when they're all standing on an even level, they can't all see the game, right? If you're 6 feet tall and the fence is 5 feet, and you're me and I'm 5'3", I'm not gonna be able to see over the fence. So, in the picture, it shows so because these people have different heights, they have different size boxes to stand on so they can see over the fence, so that they have the same opportunity to see the game, not an equal way to see the game. So equity is about making sure that we remove the barriers that individual students face to being able to access the education that we offer. It's not about saying, you know, in the old days, a teacher might spend a lot of time putting together a lesson, think they did an amazing lesson. I taught my lesson and they just didn't get it. See, that's not acceptable anymore when we're talking about equity. Equity is, as a teacher, I have to consider, what do each of my students need, so that when I design my lesson can make sure it provides those ways for kids to access what we're trying to learn. Does that help, Morgan?
Yeah, that helps. So in this policy, I did have a few questions. Is the point of this policy, is it for racial equity or just equity in general for all students?
Racial equity is only one part of addressing equity for students, and we aim to address equity, meeting the definition within our policy, which is each child gets exactly what they need to succeed. Some children may, because of race, have specific barriers to their learning. Some children, because of special learning needs, have different barriers to their learning. Some children, because of socioeconomic needs, have some of the same or some different barriers to their learning. So our job is to remove the barriers for all the kids, and the barriers are going to be different.
Okay, the only reason why I asked is because I'm looking at the policy right here, and I can see, kind of reading this, I know what you guys are trying to do, but I can see how this kind of can tie into the CRT type of thing. People could make that connection, because in line 29 and 30 under implementation and monitoring, it says the superintendent will develop and implement a system-wide racial equity plan with clear accountability and metrics. So seeing that, then it sounds like this is a racial thing. It doesn't sound like we want every kid in the district, no matter what they are, what their background is, to get the same, not the same treatment, get the treatment they need. Then it just sounds like it becomes, worded that way, it sounds like it's a racial thing.
That language is specifically required in the legislation that the legislators wrote that needed to be included in our equity policy, because the legislature, in their initial draft to address this issue, focused on equity, because that is the piece as a state, when people who are not educators are looking at questions of equity, of fairness, for however you want to put it, for kids and learning, that is one that's easiest to see. And that is one that has been very much a part of the public discourse in recent years, and that's what rose to discussion in the legislature, and that's what they wanted to make sure was resolved. But we also worked hard within North Mason's policy to recognize that that is one part of equity, and we do have to address that. And there are other issues for other kids. So equity is not just about one group of kids. It's about every individual getting what they need. But we have to report to the state and to the feds how we're doing based on the data that we have for our whole population compared to identified subgroups of students. So that includes students identified in subgroups by race, by socioeconomic status, by special education status, by if they have a 504 plan under the ADA, by, I'm probably missing several, but by sex. So all of those are part of the reporting that we're required to do, both under state and federal law, and that's why it needs to be called out in the policy. So good questions, Morgan.
Yeah, and then just one last thing. I know we're not amending this policy at any time, but I would recommend that, because race is mentioned multiple times throughout the policy and racial equity, not till the very end in C, the very last section, the last paragraph, then it says, North Mason School District will ensure that every child gets what they need every day in order to have the life skills, yada, 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 to live a fulfilling life. So I would just recommend making that, maybe moving that up, because right now it seems like this is a very race-centered policy, because it's race, 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 and then, oh yeah, this applies to everyone. Type
I'll
of thing.
also direct you up to line 18, 19, 20, and 21, where it does talk about the diversity of our student body and our staff and our community and how important that is. I also, I know that we have that in there, and putting those things in there too.
I think also, so you have a process for considering amendments or changes to policies, and that would happen next month. When, as you can see, like below this in the policy review section, that we're looking at ER 12 and ER 9 this month. That would be next month when we get to that point of the policy. You could make some recommendations.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to. I'm not saying disagree with it. There's a lot of stuff in here that I do agree with and support, but it is coming from an outside perspective. I do see what some of the parents mean and what they're reading, because yes, it does say under the leadership, it does mention that, but it doesn't say it clearly, boom, here's the mission statement till the end.
I mean, I think that piece you called out, line 46 through 49, it's very clear and concise in that way because it is the summary sentence, right? But the first 3-4 paragraphs of this, I think, address that exact, the concern that you're discussing. It's institutional bias that results in predictability of student performance based on race, background, circumstance. And then in the second paragraph as well, and the third. And so I hear what you're saying, but I do think that this policy really does a good job of setting up here, here's our summary at the beginning of what we're about to talk about, and here is section 1, section 2, section 3, section 1 being system-wide racial equity plan, part 2 being eliminate systemic disparities, and this is how we will do that. And then I did notice a typo here that needs to be
I saw that too.
Roman numeral 3, systemic equity focused on 3 critical areas: family, student, and community engagement, leadership, and then teaching and learning. And then that's broken down, each of those broken down even more. To me, this is a very comprehensive policy, and we've spent a lot of time making sure that it is inclusive. So I do commend the superintendent for that work.
And when you said, of course, this wouldn't be amended ever, and when she jumped in and said, no, there's a process.
I didn't mean
I know
ever.
what you
I meant right
but
now.
I wanted to point
Yeah.
out that, no, don't ever feel that way, that you have your input on this and that we come together and do that. But I appreciate the conversation on this because it is a hot topic. So, any more conversation?
Well, I just want to throw in, once you mentioned the word equity, it shows up when you begin rethinking what you know. And a couple of years ago, I've made the confession, I'm not particularly good at math. I can remember crying over long division when I was in grade school. So, one of the things I sought for when I was in high school was help. And I think that's because I had a parent, my mother, that encouraged me to get out educational help. I didn't get it, but at least I asked for it. I attended several of our math classes here, particularly those that Jody Olson was teaching. And man, I can't say I got it, but the only reason was because I didn't want to take up student time seeing the teacher after class. But the point was, it was available to me. And the point was, the text was a lot better than anything I was talking about. And the teacher said things that really spoke to my condition, and I'm sure that it spoke to the condition of other people. So I think that's an advancement in equity, right there. I just think it does come up, and I think my general impression has been, in being around the schools these past several years, is that as the teaching improves, everybody gets served a bit better. And the only baseline I've got is my own education, which wasn't bad by the standards of the time. So I add my commendations.
Very good. All right, then we are still, are we finished discussing that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And all for finding the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 12, say aye.
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 Aye, and all opposed? Not hearing any, that passes. And then we just have the discussion for the policy review on the student conduct and discipline. Was there any discussion on what we had already done for last?
Did you want to make any changes to those policies? Yeah.
I think this is an issue that for our public relations person, as I've gone around the community, I've heard a lot of comments on discipline, mostly negative, and I don't know whether I don't believe they correspond with reality much, but there is a perception out there. And it's kind of habitual because there's a lot of propaganda out there about how bad the public schools are, and that certainly isn't in keeping with my observation. It's not in keeping with my observation. So I think some of this is a perception issue that just needs to be addressed.
And we're looking forward to our connection with the community when our new person comes in for that.
Yes.
All right. Okay. We are moving down here to the adjournment phase. We are going to be going to executive session for employee performance for our superintendent. Yes, anybody could stick around if they would like until we come back. And it'll take us, it's 30 minutes is usually our time in there. Okay, then I'm going to adjourn to executive session for 30 minutes.
Okay.
Back on.
Alrighty.
John, will you pass down your?
And I am going
draft
to
contract?
re-adjourn our meeting.
Reconvene.
Reconvene, re-adjourn. How do I do that?
You just
Hey,
did
what-
it.
Reconvene.
Past
We're
my
back.
bedtime.
You reconvened.
I'm going to reconvene the meeting, tap, tap. There we go. All right. Okay, and we don't talk about Fight Club, so here we go. Good of the order, board and superintendent.
So I have a couple things.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about, and I talked about the other study session, I was going to talk about whether we want to do a study session to take a look at the minimal redistricting that we have to do as a result of the 2020 census. It doesn't, the changes that we're going to propose are very slight to just a couple of the districts. It doesn't impact all of our current board members or our 2 people who have applied for District 1, none of them would be none of you or those folks would be impacted by the change. So it is fairly small. So we could either do a study session to spend time looking at the maps, or we could include it in the next meeting or 2 as an action item and look at the maps at that point. So I want to ask you what you think about that.
My thought, I would think that our meeting would be sufficient for that, and we wouldn't have to do a special meeting for that, or study session, or did you want to have a study session before our meeting, like the hour before?
You know, I think if it was like really big changes to the director areas, we'd want to spend more time, but the changes are really tiny.
Okay.
So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time.
Not a lot of time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think our meeting is fine as long as we can, look at the maps and discuss and, it's interesting.
Our goal is to balance the voter, the number of voters per each section, and the adjustments to do that are not that big, are very small.
So we can do it at the May 19th
Board meeting.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll put that on the agenda then for May
Okay.
19th.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, at the last meeting, we presented and discussed and tabled a resolution regarding the timber revenues and distributions to the schools. Through one of the board members, a community member who spoke about their concerns, has provided us with a different draft that we could consider. But before, and we talked about having a study session, but before we do, I received a late notice today that the WASDA folks who work on the timber, WASDA and Jim, particularly from SQUIM, are meeting with OSPI tomorrow to talk about where all of that is and if it remains a concern as far as school funding. And I'd like to see Jim's report about what the impact on funding is at this point in time before I ask you to take more action on that. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, I've dealt with Jim before. We testified together to get some, I've forgotten what it was now, but, to equalize, what was it?
The regionalization?
Yeah, regionalization. And so this guy is on top of timber, and so I just want to endorse what Dana says. I mean, I know this guy, and so I think it'd be wise for us to consider whatever he has to say before we consider the proposal that Julianne Gale sent to us.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay.
So that's what I had.
Okay. All right. So my computer just pooped out on me.
It's just board member, good of the order.
And, yeah, so, anybody for good of the order? After Helen there.
Well, I would really like to thank Morgan. I think you're doing a great job of representing your constituents
Here, here.
as well as
Thank you.
us
Yeah,
at the WASDA meetings and bringing back your perspective. I really appreciate that and the work that you do. So thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, I
thank you. I
concur with
really
that.
appreciate it.
Every time you talk and every time that I get to talk to you, I'm excited to see who you're gonna be. You know, like, where is this guy gonna land? You know, where is he gonna end up? Wherever you work at, whatever you decide to feed, you will succeed. I can see that in you, so.
Yes, thank you. I
Yeah, I'm glad you're
appreciate
part
it.
of our board.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
thank
concur.
you.
I find you're so involved in a way that it's just refreshing to see. We appreciate you.
and from a
Thank you.
political point of view, I think he'll take some people with him. So if anybody has a complaint against the public schools, I have a counter exhibit.
There you go.
Thank you.
Exhibit
right.
A.
All right. Anybody else for the good of the order?
Yeah, I already covered this, I suppose, but I did have the communication with Julianne Gale, and I encouraged her to offer the counter proposal that, so she worked it up, and That doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna vote for it, but I wanna see, you know, at least it looked like it was thoroughly reasoned. And that's why I brought it to Leanna to, you know, share with leadership, and so we could consider it ourselves if we want to.
Yep, and,
And I guess maybe this is for Dana. Looks like Victor is going to open up again, and mask and whatever. I'll probably show up, and they always have some announcements. And I would like to announce something from the schools to remind them we exist.
What are you talking about?
Victor
The Victor
Club.
Club.
Oh, the improvement club?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've been not meeting, is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Now they're going to?
Since the plague has been on us. As a matter of fact, have you ever been to Victor?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I've been to
okay.
that hall.
All right.
John usually brings something from the Victor Club to say.
Okay, you're a
so-
part of that club?
Yeah,
I see,
and
I
so
see,
I
okay.
like something to say, so if somebody's got something of particular message value, I would like to have it. It'll be a
Okay.
while before they meet, but
Yeah.
I'd,
Well, yeah, when you're closer to the meeting, I'll have more up-to-date
Okay.
information, and we'll do that.
all right.
Very
Okay.
cool. All right, so we are on over here to, unless Morgan, did you have anything?
I do not have anything to add. All I'd like to say is this meeting was good. I enjoyed hearing from the community members. I got to talk with them during the, well, you guys were in the study session or the executive session. And it's nice to see that these parents very deeply care
Hear, hear.
about what's going on at these meetings. And I do like if maybe we don't have to do it very often, but being able to have maybe a study session where we can sit down and actually have a conversation with these parents instead of just having to sit there and listen as we do in our normal board meetings. So that's just something I would like for us to think about, because there's a lot these parents would like to say, good or bad, but just being able to give a chance to listen to them, because that's what I've heard, especially with virtual things,
Yeah.
having the virtual meetings. They weren't a big fan of that because they felt like, even though it was COVID, that they were getting pushed away. So if I just think once or twice a year, maybe being able to sit down, have a study session, here are the topics, like a round table that we do at the high school.
Yeah.
Being able to come in and at least talk to them. I'm not sure if we can do that
We
legally.
can't do that, not with the whole board.
Not with the whole board?
No.
Okay.
We could have a public forum and a couple board members could be there.
Yeah, just some way to sit down and to be able to connect with not just the voting base, but also the parent base.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're speaking to is something that a lot of us
And
have felt, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think that, but maybe we can brainstorm
That's why
other
we,
ways
yeah.
of fulfilling that.
We need to find ways to get you back out now that
Yeah,
there's an opportunity.
right.
Yeah.
Like John going back to
Victor.
Victor and you guys getting out to those community things
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being a presence is a way to do that more informally that protects us from being in violation of the open public
Right.
meeting law. And so,
Yeah.
you
It's
know.
what, that's what I like about the roundtable with the kids, students, I don't say kids. But with the students where one of us or two of us get to go and then the superintendent is there and not suggesting it, but looking if that was something like you did a community roundtable or a community retreat, you know, where the superintendent is there with one or two of the board members and then that was
Sort of like a pop-up.
popped in my head. So,
Like a
yeah.
pop-up roundtable, and, you know, I'm on board for all of that. I feel like there's just a huge,
Hey,
Good
for the,
things to
for the
think
good
about.
of,
Okay.
for the good of the
Good
order,
future.
one thing that just occurred to me, this isn't urgent, but as things are opening up, and I'm thinking particularly Victor, because we got enough money to run for a few years without any meetings.
Nice.
But one of the famous things that Victor does is, of course, the
flea market.
flea market. So
That's my favorite.
periodically, in times past, I've had groups, I've had the superintendent in and a couple of people to give an update on something. And so it's another opportunity without violating a public meeting sort of thing for somebody from the schools to remind people we exist and particularly of that voting age, of people that look like me
Nice.
and are
John.
similar age group, need to get out and vote and really care about the public schools. And so having a little emissary group that comes out to them, you know, gives them a good feeling that the schools are attending to their concerns.
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder.
I just had a quick question. I just want to see what you guys think of it. So we do those high school roundtables with the students. Would you guys be interested in doing maybe one at the middle school,
Yes.
possibly during the day?
We have done that before.
We have.
We have, yeah.
Have we done any recently?
No, because the whole COVID issue really limited an awful lot, but yeah, we would like to do
We
Now
have-
that it's
we have
opening
done
back up,
those.
right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We have to do a lot more training with the middle school students to stay on task ahead of time. And so when we did those in the past, your predecessor went and met with them and kind of guided them about how this was going to work before the board members got there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about doing. I may go down there, stop in their leadership class and their ASB meetings,
That'd be lovely.
see what they think, and then they'll probably want to do it, and then I can
But,
Yeah.
do
but
some
what I think
training.
is important, what we're trying to do, what we've always tried to do at the high school, and we need to continue to try to do, if we're looking for student voice, the kids who are in leadership are going to make their voices heard.
Mhm.
We need to make sure that a cross-section of the student population is represented in the conversation. That's
Absolutely,
part of our
mentioned that.
equity, you know?
Yeah.
We don't want to just say all the kids that are in leadership class. We want to
Yeah.
say, how do we make sure the kids who never tell anybody about how they're feeling are in the room too?
Yeah, the
I
only hard
noticed that everybody was.
And the
honor
counselors can help with that.
Yeah.
students or honor clubs or, yeah, that, I definitely.
The only hard thing about that is when we do these, we normally open it up to the whole school. We put on the announcement sometimes. But normally the leadership kids are the only ones that show up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
think
what
that-
we've done though in the past, and we can do again, is we know that we invite the whole school and that broad way, but then we need to identify
personal
and invite
invitation.
individual kids.
Yeah.
I would, because the kids that, when you put it on the thing, if they're not willing to speak up for, you know, the ones that are less likely to speak up, aren't gonna sign up,
Yeah.
speak up to say
They
they
have
wanna
to
go
get
to it.
asked to come,
But
and so we can,
physically asked,
continue
I
to
think
work
they
with the
would.
counselors and other people who can help us identify some students
Yeah.
to represent a cross-section of the student body.
That sounds good. I'll look at trying to figure something out for that for
have
you
to go
guys.
and, like, scope them out.
Yeah, I'll let
Punch them down and corner them, no, I'm just kidding.
I'll let you guys know. Hopefully we could do something by the end of next month.
That'll be a good connection too, to find new friends. All right. Director Shepherd Bull will be doing our self-assessment today.
Yes. So we have 4 members present. This is our board self-assessment for our meeting today. Our general meeting behavior. I'm just gonna cherry pick some of these. We did have a well-planned agenda focused on the work of the board. We did have deliberations and decision-making processes that were public, except for the executive session, which is not meant to be public.
By law.
By law. Participation was certainly balanced. Everyone participated, no one dominated. I think I heard everybody here speak up. Everyone was prepared. Work was conducted in an atmosphere of trust and openness. And I do think that was satisfactory. I know we had some hot button conversation, and I hope everybody here feels as though we're able to communicate with openness. And with this last one, we treat each other with respect and courtesy. So I do rate our entire general meeting behavior as satisfactory. For governance principles review, our board actions occurred at the policy level rather than at the operational level. I will say yes. We minimized time spent monitoring past performance. Yes. We clarified our priorities and values when considering potential outcomes, beneficiaries, and costs of outcomes. We follow an annual calendar based on a plan for doing its work. The board chair helped the board efficiently conduct its meetings. And the board supports the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies. I'm going to rank us all as yes under following governance principles. And I will rate us overall with a satisfactory score.
Fantastic. Okay, and then our next board meeting, our special one being on May 10th at 6 o'clock, and then our next actual board meeting is May 19th at 6:30 here in the boardroom, and we will adjourn our meeting.
And the special
right.
sessions